Brodes Media.
So when we saw the news that Fletcher Cox was no longer going to be a part of the Eagles and he's released, and you want to talk about how confusing the money game is with the salary cap? Try getting information on what the hell Fletcher Cox's contract really means. There's not a damn soul. There's people who focus on only NFL salaries. Their job is to figure out the cap and what it means and what a post-June 1st designate. Well, all this stuff, everything about all these ins and outs. But if you do it before this date, this happens. If you do it prior to this date, there's a different cap hit. And if you cut him here, you get this, you get him there, and it means that. But what about the bonus and this and that? There's guys that they excel. That's all they do every day is study this stuff. And they have zero knowledge on how to fully grasp the Fletcher Cox contract. So I'm not going to pretend that I got it all set in stone. But we do know that Fletcher Cox's play has not been the same as we would have liked over the last couple of years compared to the prime of Fletcher Cox. And he has hefty money tied to his name. And this is a dirty business where we can't afford you at this rate, Fletcher Cox. We need to get some money back and retain some cash with our salary. This is our best option. Now, originally, before I saw the news tonight that a couple people are reaching out to sources that claim it seems that Fletcher and the Eagles are going to get a marriage together for possibly a one-year deal. If you ask me prior to seeing that, do I feel he'd be back? Absolutely not, because we see teams like the Rams and like the Buffalo Bills and like the Raiders. There's teams going after some guys and spending cash. And while we always correlate Fletcher Cox with the prime Fletcher Cox, he might not be that. And we saw him at his ceiling, which is 6 Pro Bowls and doing things that a lot of past Eagles have never done before. If you study Fletcher Cox from just, does he have anything left? He still's got something. He could still do some damage. He's not Danny Green, okay? Danny Green has zero. He's not Ryan Kerrigan, where Ryan Kerrigan was once someone who made a little bit of jolt happen each night to what? He doesn't have a tackle? Huh? He hasn't had a tackle in 16 games, but he has how many percentage of the snaps? Make it make sense. He's not there. He's still got life to him. He's still got the pulse. It's just nowhere close to shooting out of a cannon like we've seen. Now, he did play better in the second half of the season. He called out Jonathan Gannon and the usage rate and despised how things were handled originally. So if you put all the puzzle pieces out there on the table, the fact that he's possibly signing back, I get it's an easier stay. You got all your stuff here. You don't got to worry about being moved on from and looking at a different house and trying to buy out, moving away, all that stuff. It's not easy. It's difficult. But based off the way that this was handled, I'd imagine that if Fletcher Cox had the money that he was looking for in another city, that he would be there. Maybe the market wasn't as sexy and as appealing as he would have anticipated. So does that counter what I'm saying? Do I sound like a hypocrite if I feel like there's still a little left in? I do. I think it's a combination of he still has something, but he wants more than what he can actually give back. And teams are maybe thinking, look, I mean, if the Eagles, or there's another theory out there that Joe Banner put out on social media, which is if the Eagles cut one of their best players, and Fletcher Cox, a face of the franchise style guy, and didn't put out one post about thank you so much for all you did, and maybe a couple little paragraphs from Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. If they didn't do that, wouldn't you imagine that this was part of the plan the entire time? Hey, look, Fletch, we'll release you, and we'll bring you right back, and we'll do what we need to. We just kind of have to maneuver around this thing. You've always been kind to us. You've always allowed for us to play with that type of money off to the side, but we got you what you were looking for. Just work with this here, and we'll figure it out. There would have been way more than just a cutthroat, you're out of here, see you later, Fletch. It's not working out. So I guess I could see and understand probably the legitimacy. Think about Zach Ertz going out. He talked to the media, and he was crying in tears. And not to tell you that Fletcher Cox would have had to follow suit and have to do that for me to give it any sort of recognition of, oh, yeah, you know, this is what they were trying to do, and this is them handling it professionally. No, that's not necessarily the case. So it had to be exactly the way Zach Ertz went out. But you just see as an example on how this was previously done very recently and with a similar style of player. Don't you think? Don't you think there were side discussions on exactly what they were trying to accomplish and what possibly they will execute within the next day or so? I don't know. I guess I could kind of believe both stories. There's reasonable sort of data for both stories to kind of have sense, and there's logic behind both. Where Fletcher's going, screw you. I've restructured my contract how many times? You put me in Jonathan Gannon's defensive scheme that I hated, and you're just releasing me like that? No, I'll test the waters. I'll see what else is out there. And then something isn't there, and you go, maybe Philly's fine. Maybe Philly's fine. With Howie Roseman, him getting the extension, just because he got the extension, it doesn't mean that he's going to necessarily be here for the time of that. But this isn't surprising, and there should be no outrage at all. Oh, I can't believe they're bringing him back. What? What are you saying? You didn't think Jeffrey Lurie would bring back Howie Roseman? See, that's just not knowing where your expectations should be. And then I'm hearing the nonsense of wait for the draft to happen. If he fails, fire him. If he succeeds, then you keep him. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You have 3 first-round draft picks that's ready to change your franchise's direction and go into a whole new era of Eagles football, and you're going to allow someone who's on the hot seat to get fired to either have a chance to save his job or lose his job. So let's say the draft picks end up being a little bit murky. So you let him do it, then you fire him, and you waste that chance of you turning things around just to flip a coin if Howie Roseman can do it or not. That's one of the worst thoughts ever in the history of thoughts on how to run an organization properly. Howie Roseman's got to be here. Howie Roseman isn't as bad as you want him to be. I'm not telling you he's the greatest in the world, but here he is signing Hassan Reddick, which is a major, major deal for this team. Versatile, game-changing playmaker. And I actually got criticized for saying that we haven't had a playmaker in quite some time recently on a show. And the outrage about, Darius Slay had some pick sixes. Yeah, I'm not talking about an outside corner. I'm talking about someone in that, he's an outside linebacker, but he's a pass rusher. But, just someone towards that front to really wreck a game. And I know Brandon Graham did prior to his injury. He didn't have like the number of sacks necessarily that we would like to have, but he impacted the game strongly and forced quarterbacks to be uncomfortable. He'd run his mouth. There was the intimidation factor of just chirping all the time, constantly yapping, constantly getting in the grill of everybody. And I'm not downplaying what a prime Fletcher Cox was or what Javon Hargrave was in the beginning of the year, but a Hassan Reddick is really different for where he's at in his career and this attitude and edge that he plays with. And inside that box area of having that game-changing playmaker is more of what I was referencing. Yeah, Darius Slay. But Big Play Slay's his nickname, Brodes. How did you miss that? Let's slow down on the Big Play Slay thing. I know this year he did a little bit have that noise and have a good season, but we ripped him apart reasonably for having a nickname Big Play Slay without having necessarily those big plays in previous seasons. Anyway, Howie Roseman. There was also talks that he was super close to getting Marcus Williams. Damn. That would have been knocking the free agency out of the park. Now, I knew they needed to get fresher up front on the defensive side, but I didn't know if they would go out and land the biggest target in the entire offseason in Hassan Reddick. I didn't know. I had zero knowledge that it would be like that right from the jump. Bang. Now, Howie's active. Howie's making phone calls. Every time there's a big name, most likely the Eagles are checking in on that. The Eagles are making calls to see what they're hearing. The Eagles are trying to get a reference on maybe what other teams are thinking. So there's a lot of reasons why Howie Roseman does that. So when you see it instantly, I was a little surprised, but I'm not surprised at the same time. But I was surprised to see it, even though I'm not surprised at the same time. But I was a little stunned to see it, even though I'm not, just based off of the track record of Howie Roseman. If you landed a Marcus Williams too, now I don't know what direction they go. Could they get a Matthew at this point? They missed out on Allen Robinson. So they did miss out on some other players that I'm sure that they were looking for. We mentioned what was the 1-year deal that went to the Lions. DJ was a name that maybe they could have landed for 1 year at a reasonable price. I probably would have liked that one. They were trying to get Calvin Ridley. I mean, hell, that's another name too. Even though I love the Marcus Williams edition the most, you told me that Calvin Ridley did not bet on games and screw himself over, and he's matched up with a Dallas Goedert, a Miles Sanders, a Devontae Smith, and a Quez Watkins is out there too. I'm super stoked for what that could possibly be. I would be cool with the Juju. And don't be shocked if they still obviously target that wide receiver position to add to the Hassan Reddick. But with this extension with Howie Roseman, they're not tied to that. I've seen Jeffrey Lurie at one point in time look at Joe Banner and go, this isn't working out. This is not what we can do. We have to go in a different direction. Joe Banner. Sometime it'll happen. The marriage will break up. The friendship, we respect it. But with our business, we have to utilize a different path. We need to get a fresh voice. We have to get a fresh perspective.